Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and we're going to talk about Dark Knights of Steel. What is Dark Knights of Steel? Dark Knights of Steel is a brand new 2021 DC Comics miniseries written by Thomas Taylor and beautifully drawn by Yasmin Putri. Okay? And, all right, so spoilers for all of Dark Knights, of Steel, which is issues 1 and 2, which are currently out, and it's a 12-issue miniseries. All right, let's talk about this and talk about how you can use it in your Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign. So one, I just picked this up at I went to my FLGS, my friendly local game shop, which when it comes to tabletop, it's only the third most important thing in the shop. I would say 45% of the store is comic books. 40% of the store is wargaming miniatures, okay? And then 5% of the store, if that, it might be as low as 2%. Now, you know what? Yeah, 5% is fair, is tabletop role-playing games, okay? Actually, I forgot board games in there, which would cut from the other two. But so I go to get Strixhaven. I pick up Strixhaven, but I'm like, hey, I'll look through the comics, and I found this Dark Knights of Steel. So issue number 2 just came out. I've read through issue 1 and 2, and it is spectacular. And really, what it is it's Dungeons and Dragons. DC Comics, period. End of set. Dungeons & Dragons with DC superheroes. It is 100% that, right? So you could use it in a lot of cool... So, one, I'm going to give you the spoilers right now. Just so you, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, Scott, no, I know you say this is cool, Scott, but is it cool? It's hard to, and people are... I think people can be very dismissive of something if they haven't seen it. I'm that way. I hated Wild Beyond the Witchlight before I saw it, and, now that I have it, I just rub it on my face every 2 days. I love that book, right? And I detested it. I thought it was going to be a horrible book before it dropped into my hands, right? So I think it's easy to dismiss things that you haven't seen firsthand. And so I'm going to give you, just what happens in issue number 1. It's incredible, right? So basically, Superman origin story, okay? So Krypton explodes, and then basically you got the spaceship that crashes in the farmland in Wisconsin. Here's the differences, right? One, Kal-El and I think Jor-El is Kal-El's father. So Superman's father and his mother are in the ship with him, and they live. And the world they crash land on is not America, Wisconsin. It's it's a fantasy realm, right? So bog standard fantasy realm. So now you have Superman, his mom and dad, all who are powered by the sun, and all who are essentially have the powers of God. So they can shoot lasers from their eyes. They can, they have cold breath. They have super speed. All of it, right? And so basically they become king. His Superman's dad becomes king, and this story takes place when Superman is 16. Okay. Now here's where it gets really interesting. So Jor-El is king, and Superman's mom is queen. And basically what you get then is you get a situation where they're king and queen, and their son is a knight who really is treated like a prince. He's not really allowed to go out and get into danger, even though it would be darn near impossible for anybody to harm him unless they had kryptonite, right? So the real knight who does all the work of King Jor-El is Bruce Wayne, right? Now he is a bastard child. That's the term they use in the product in Dark Knights of Steel, right? And that's a terrible term, but they're using it because it's specific to that time, right? So Thomas Wayne is a bastard child, right? And so, but Bruce Wayne is a bastard child, and he does all the real knighting. He does all the real hard work of the actual place. But of King Jor-El's realm, right? King Jor-El's realm is opposed by the Green Man. He's a leader who serves as a king, and that is Green Lantern, right? And so Green Lantern is there, and it's the Green Lantern specifically from the Justice League, right? African American Green Lantern, which is kind of interesting. And so basically, and so Jor-El is opposed by this, very, very powerful Green Lantern fantasy king, right? So here's what happens, all right? So basically, the people of this fantasy realm begin to fear King Jor-El, his wife, and his son because they're so powerful. They have the power of gods. And they're like, hey, we're humans, but we should rule our own realm. So what ends up happening is the Green Man goes and uses his Green Lantern ring, and in the forest, in King Jor-El's kingdom, from like 3 miles out, the Green Man magically enchants the arrow of Green Arrow, and at this point, Green Arrow puts an arrow into flight, and at that same time, King Jor-El takes Bruce Wayne up to the parapets of his castle, and says, "Hey, I know you've been concerned that you've been bewitched and you have these powers that you shouldn't have, but here's the problem: you're not a bastard. You're not the son of Thomas. You're not the son of of the Wayne of your father and mother, the Waynes. You're actually my son, and and Martha Wayne, right? So you're not Bruce Wayne's father's son. You are the son of your Wayne mother, but I'm your father, and you have the same powers as Kal-El, as Superman, right? And all this is happening in a bog standard fantasy realm, right? And the moment he gets done saying this, Green Arrow's arrow thunk right through his eye, straight through his head, dead, right? And the Green Man has used kryptonite, to make it so that he's dead, right? Fantastic start to a series. Unbelievable, right? Now what really shocked me is this is not basic standard fantasy, and it's also not basic fantasy loader, and it's not basic fantasy Harry Potter, right? It is specifically Dungeons and Dragons. It looks and feels like a Dungeons and Dragons book. And one thing I think is really incredible is I think basic fantasy is being replaced by Dungeons and Dragons because people don't know basic fantasy. Less and less people are reading Lord of the Rings every year. I couldn't drag my kids to those books, right? They're like, this is a bunch of up a hill, down a hill. It's super long and boring, right? Now, when I was 9, I was captivated by it, right? But I didn't have 3 game systems, 3 powerful world-immersing video game systems, right? So Lord of the Rings is dying. Harry Potter, I told you a million times, is definitely dying, right? Basic fantasy fails left and right. But Dungeons and Dragons is not failing. It is the banner for fantasy. And for Americans, fantasy is Dungeons and Dragons. And I think if you look at things, you'll see that they are doing a very spot-on job of not making a basic fantasy TTRPG, but really a basic fantasy comic book miniseries. They're making Dungeons and Dragons with DC heroes, right? So it's definitely worth you looking at, and you can use it in the following ways. One, it can inspire you, right? So I think good dungeon masters need good inspiration. And you might be like, hey, I don't need inspiration. You're probably right. If you're listening to this channel, you might not need extra inspiration. There are a lot of dungeon masters who are just getting their start, and they get frustrated when they're running crap games, right? And the reality is, I think a lot of dungeon masters run really bad games, not because they're bad dungeon masters, they're just at the beginning of it. They're making the mistakes that you and I made 30 years ago, right? And it could be very, so if you're a newer dungeon master in 5th edition, this could be really inspiring. The other thing is, if you're a very experienced 5th edition dungeon master, you could take this and run this as your next Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign, or even as a break campaign. It's really brilliant, and you can literally just run DC heroes in your world. And why would you do that? Well, there's a really good reason. when you drop these characters into your world, you could just say, "Oh, this is Bruce Wayne." Everybody knows who it is, right? You could say, "Oh, this is Superman, Clark Kent." Everybody knows who it is, right? And you're going to change their names to make it a little more fantasy based. But one of the things is each of these characters comes with amazing story already locked in, and so you can get the best of both. You can get the super awesome, super incredible 5th edition narrative engine running with the super awesome, super powerful non-player characters that the entire DC world is. And so pick up Dark Knights of Steel. This is a great tool for any dungeon master. Highly recommended. Have you tried it? Have you checked it out? Let me know what you think. Do you use comic books for inspiration for your Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign? I'd love to hear. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.